This is Sandy. Well, Tammy's getting started. Just a reminder about GPUC next week, our Great Plains User Conference. It's Monday, Tuesday are Key to Act days, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are GP days. So hope you can make it.
What are you seeing on the screen? Just the reporting made easy?
I'm not seeing anything yet.
You're not seeing anything.
No.
I can't present. It's not giving me.
Let's see.
Oh, there we go. Got
okay.
it.
There, now I see it.
Let's see. Which one? It's this one. There we go. Yay!
Okay, I'll mute myself, and remember, chat in questions if you have them, and I'll keep an eye on that for Tammy.
Yep. So Sandy is my helper for the day. She got roped into it. Thanks, Sandy.
Yeah, you bet.
So we only have about 20 minutes, so we're going to make this kind of quick. Next week, we have a ton of 1099 presentations. So like Sandy said, in our GPUC, we do a lot of year-end 1099 printing, stuff like that. So I'm going to go over some of the highlights of things. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want to get a copy of the slide presentation, this is my email, Tammy, T-A-M-I, at iscorp.biz. Just shoot me an email and let me know you want the deck, and I'll send it to you. So our agenda for today is talking about what we need to do to prepare for 1099 printing, the changes that were made to 1099s that took effect actually last year at the end of the year, but there were some people that weren't ready for that. So we are going to go over that piece of it also. And then we're going to talk about how to use SmartList for verification, and then obviously some tips and tricks. If we don't get to the tips and tricks, again, they'll be available in the slide presentation, so you can always look them over also. So the first thing we want to do is how we want to prepare for our 1099s. We definitely want to get the latest year-end service pack done. I think it's still at 18.3, but one should be coming out fairly soon. I think they typically post it right after GPUC. It's probably going to be 18.4 or 18.5. It has the necessary changes for your 1099 non-employee compensation type. So if you have not gotten those, you'll want to get that set up. You do want to review your vendor setups and make sure your 1099 types and your payments amounts are correct. And we'll show you how to do that in SmartLists to get that done. Start now. You want to start now. You don't want to start mid-January and start looking at addressing missing information from your vendor record. So you want to make sure that you have correct addresses, correct ID numbers, federal ID numbers. You want to make sure that for those that are not companies but are actual vendors that are individuals, that their social security numbers are correct. You want to make sure that all of the information that you would normally get are actually correct in your system. I would suggest reviewing policies on how to add vendors and verifying that all W-9s are not expired, that they are actually scanned and in the system attached to your vendors, and that we're looking at those from that point of view. That your records are corrected as needed, and that you're verifying your 1099 thresholds. some thresholds have changed. Normally it's $500, but there are some places where it's 6, some places where it's 1,000. Make sure you understand those thresholds and where they are for each of those different boxes, and we'll show you where to change those. Always, always print a 1099 edit list, and verify that it's correct. And then if you're e-filing, or if you want to e-file, you want to review now if you need to purchase anything. Also, the one thing I didn't put on here, make sure you get your 1099 forms if you're going to print them on your printers, that you get them now. Because I know last year, a couple of my clients were printing towards the middle of the year, and every store that could sell 1099s were out of them. So make sure you get those on order so that you have enough. Again, print your 1099 forms, and filing deadlines are January 31st, 2021. Sorry, didn't miss that one. And then after you've finished your 1099s, we recommend that you make a year-end backup copy. Contact your IT, make a year-end copy of your company, and keep that so that you have that in case the IRS comes back and we have to see what you've done. Because as you start doing the new year after the year-end close, you can't get back to that information. And then make sure you close your purchasing in your fiscal periods. So the 1099 non-employee compensation is a new release for the 2020 year. Now it is 2021, so this has been in effect for a year, but they do have some things that Microsoft has changed, some bugs that they found with certain stuff. So you want to make sure that you have this information right here in this tax type, the 1099 box. All that is set up correctly in your system by vendor. There is a update 1099 information utility that I'm going to show you. So if some of them are not correct, or you do need to correct it, you can use that utility to do that. So let's see. I am going to end this slideshow and pull this to the side so that we can get into GP. So a few things with your vendor. So under your vendor cards is where most of your 1099s information, or all of your 1099 information, belongs. So it's under the options button here. So you want to make sure that all your 1099s, if they are a 1099 vendor, that they're categorized correctly: miscellaneous interest, dividend, or non-employee compensation. That's the new tax type. And then that their box is correct, whether it's 1, non-employee compensation, which used to be miscellaneous tax type, and a 7 box, which was non-employee compensation. Now it's a 1 through 7 here. So they broke that down a little bit. Now you'll notice under your miscellaneous that there is no 7. So there's no 7 on here. And if you do find that you still have some under miscellaneous and they're categorized wrong, you could use under this utilities area here. Yep, we'll save it. There's the update 1099 information here. And this is where you can go through and say by vendor, in the transactions themselves, and both the vendor and the transactions. So you can say if it was going to miscellaneous and it was going to, I think when the update came in, it put everything to, I want to say rents or other income maybe. But you can say I want to update all my vendors that are set for miscellaneous other income to now be non-employee compensation, non-employee compensation. And you can even restrict to a vendor ID or a type of vendor.
Tammy, we have one
Yeah,
question. Can I ask?
sure.
Um, can you suggest some places to order the 1099 forms that are compatible with printing them out of GP?
Staples is a good place, Office Max, um, any of those type of stores have a great selection of them. You'll have to decide. I don't think there's a lot of people that have the dot matrix printers that have the rolling thing. They're all laser now. Um, but you can order them in a pack and they have different colors on them. So you could have the white goes to the bottom part goes to the IRS and the top part goes to, or vice versa, goes to the government and one goes to the vendor. And then you have a couple copies that are behind it. So just make sure you know if you're doing like a 3 print, a 3 copy print, that it's not, it's collated, I think, where it goes 111, 222, 333 versus continuous where it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes back and goes 1, 2, 3, 4, because then you'll get stuff on different colored paper. But yeah, good question. I always get
And
mine from Staples.
we have one more question if you're
Sure.
open to it. Okay. I see that the 1099 NEC is now a 3-up instead of 2-up. Will the year-end update that for us?
Yes. Yep. It does do that.
Cool, thanks. That's all for now.
Yep. So it does do that. So what I was saying with this utility is you may have vendors that are done that way that you've automatically changed or have changed, but their transactions may not be changed that way. You can also change the transactions. So you can go by document date and change, or voucher number, and change certain transactions to be that way. Just be careful. I would either do the vendor or the vendor and transactions, because then you can restrict those transactions by vendor ID as well as date or voucher number, versus if you just do the 1099s, you only have a one-to-one relationship. It doesn't give you the restriction of the vendor on that. Let's see. So we talked a little bit about the vendors. The other thing that was added last year was the doing business as. So again, under your vendor, if they had a need to have a legal name, so it could appear on the 1099 as well as, but not affect your vendor name up here. So a lot of people put doing business as on the first line of the address ID. So if they were a corporation that was named this, but then there was doing business as something else, they all stuck this in that first line. Well, Microsoft decided to actually give you a doing business as under your options. So right here in the middle, this doing business as here, this line right here is where you're doing business as. It's a little short. I believe it's 20 characters. Could be 25. So it is a little short. It's not like you're getting your long name here, which is, I think, 58 characters. So you might be a little hard pressed if it's like a law firm that has 40, partners on it, to get that all in this doing business as. But the government wanted to pull from this. And if this is blank, because I'll probably get this question, If this is blank, it will revert to your name. But if there is something in it, it will print that out. So we talked a little bit about thresholds and where that all happens at. That is actually under setup of your payables. So setup, Dynamics tool, setup purchasing, and then your payables window. And then you have this 1099 setup button down here at the bottom. This is where you can go in, buy different tax types, and put what the threshold is. So I have $10 in most of this. For cash and non-cash, I have 600 and then a penny in for the rest. This will have your defaults in it, but you may have to change them because they may not be 600. They might be other things. 600 looks like it might be the default now though on what they're doing. So you can go in and you can put in the minimum amount on this. Yep, let's save that. Let's see, let's go through some of these tips. On the vendor ID, remember that you have your 1099 box down here. This is an address, a different address. So if where you're sending your 1099s is to an accounting firm, they want you to send it to their accounting firm instead of to them, you can then have a different address ID. This is where this box right here is where your 1099s are going to pull from. So remember that. Remember that there's a difference between a legal name and a check name. So never have your legal name in your check name unless that's what you want the check to print out. But if you don't have a doing business as, you have just a legal name up here, this is where your 1099s are going to print. Remember that you have your write letters, and you can go in and you can write 1099 letters to your vendors if you need information. So there are out-of-box letters that you can send to your vendors to verify their legal name, their ID number, their address, and that sort of stuff. Some companies go out and do that. Might be a little late to do that now, but next year, like in the middle of the summer, you could send out 1099 letters. Let's see. To fix, to generate your 1099s, you go under your routines and you print your 1099s here. And this is what it's going to show. So up here, you still have the ability to change your name and your address. This is coming from the company that you're in. You can change your name on the fly here. So if your company was in your system was abbreviated ABC, you could come in and actually put your legal name in there. You don't have to go back to your company setup to change it. But if you did need to change an address or fix the address, I can do a lookup and see all of my addresses under my companies. But if I did need to fix this, I could drill back and actually fix this address and it will come in. Remember to put your ID, your federal ID number in there, and then whichever 1099 you're printing at the time. And then again, continuous or single feed. I think single feed is what everybody uses now. Nobody really uses continuous. I don't know why they still have it, but whatever. And you can order it either by vendor ID or name, are the two ways that I would probably do it, unless you want to do it by class. and then you want to just mark your 1099 form. And then after this prints, you want to do your 1096, change your form for your 1096 so that can come in. And of course, I'm just going to go through Smart List really quick, and then we'll take any additional questions and wrap this up. So under your purchasing, the best place to go to do your 1099 check is by creating a 1099 check payable transaction. This will show all of the documents that are a payment, and where the 1099 type is not equal to a vendor. And I have it pulling for the year of 2023 because that's what I'm in, but I could do 2026, 12/31/2026, because that's where my crappy data is. Again, I only get this, but you'll get a whole list of people. I would plop that out into Excel and then do a quick pivot table on it to get your totals. And then you can verify that pivot table. Like that, and say by vendor ID and total amount. And then it will show you what their amounts are. You can then go into their 1099s for those vendors by going into cards 1099 details. You pull up that vendor, this advanced vendor, the tax type, I think it's miscellaneous, and you hit year and you put in 2026, and somewhere in here should be your totals, if I did this right. By compensation. Nope. So yeah, my data's bad. But you should see what, we could even add in that smart list what the 1099 was for this, the type that was in here for this 1099, so we could see where it went. But this should show you all of your 1099 stuff by vendor for whichever year you select. And then you just verify that that's the dollar amount that you have. The other nice thing about this smart list, don't say, yeah, on the smart list is that if the vendor has multiple different types of like you nowadays, you can only have one vendor to one type, right, in GP. So the vendor is set as its default options to miscellaneous other income, right? But if you actually do multiple different types of transactions with a vendor, you can change that on the fly with your transaction itself. So on your AP transaction, you can put in this 1099 amount, go to here, and you can change this. It will default this other income, but maybe for this one type, you want this to be a non-employee compensation because it was for something else. So now they've given you the option to go in and make changes on the transaction itself to put it into the correct buckets. Yeah, that's fine. Let's see. One other thing is, in order to make sure you haven't missed a vendor, I always go into, again, through smart lists, and I also look at my bank. So I go into my bank transactions and I look at my increase and decrease adjustments. Um, and you can build this out to make this so that you can see the different types. But I try to look at any bank transactions that have increase and decrease adjustments so that I make sure that all of my transactions are accounted for. Because you might have cut a check or paid out of petty cash for something that should have been a 1099 piece of it. Other than that, the rest are really printing 1099s of my things we went over. And let's see, let me go back. So we talked about updating the transactions and we talked about printing to make sure that your federal ID is set up, is in there, because if it's empty, it will actually be empty. It's recommended that you print to blank paper first to make sure the alignment is correct. And then the 2-up forms include a few 1096 forms for printing. So be sure that you print many copies as needed if multiples are needed. And then at the end of this, you want to close your calendar and fiscal year properly. And then if you're in if you're nervous about it or want to test it out, remember your test companies are helpful in finalizing your steps and your timing. And then again, remember to close the year once. So you hit close year, don't press this button multiple times because it will go to the next year and the next year and the next year, and then X out. So click the button once and then use your X at the top. Any other questions?
There's nothing else in the question panel right now.
Perfect. I apologize I ran over. Apologize I was late. It's been a while, since a hot minute since I did a webinar. So yeah. If you want the deck, let me know. I will pop it over to anybody that sends me an email. And yeah, have a great day.
Thanks so much, Tammy. That was great.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. How do we close this out, Sandy?
Let's see, there's